Wonka has long been collecting rare ingredients from all over the world so that one day he can open his chocolate shop. Finally, with empty pockets and only dreams under his hat, he arrives in Europe. Mrs. Sturkett gives Wonka a night's lodging in her boarding house, but slips him a contract of servitude, which he signs without looking. Under the terms of the contract, Wonka must work in her laundry with other debtors to pay off a non-existent debt. Wonka could have easily paid her by selling his delicious chocolates, but the local chocolatiers used all their connections to prevent the newcomer from joining their circle. But the world is not without good people, and Wonka is clever and talented enough to overcome any difficulties. In his day, Dan Morgan worked as a government assassin and made many enemies, and when he had to go into hiding, he had a family and lived a quiet life in Buffalo. For many years, he faithfully wore the guise of a boring salesman at a car dealership. But one beautiful day, his enemies found Dan, and he was forced to flee from his forced location. In an emergency order, he puts his relatives in the car and tries to pass off his escape as a fun, spontaneous trip for the sake of family unity. His plan seems plausible, considering that while he and his wife have been babysitting, his teenage daughter has become rebellious, and his son has quietly become an avid gamer. But enemies are following in their footsteps, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for Dan to pretend that nothing is happening. Tired of the hustle and bustle of city life, Amanda and Clay head to the suburbs for a weekend, where they have managed to rent a beautiful house with a swimming pool. Contrary to their expectations, they are unable to relax, as almost immediately the internet and communication disappear, and then, at any hour, the news. A tanker crashes into the beach because of navigation problems. Then all the local deer run from the woods to the house at once. Then a plane crashes somewhere. But the most annoying thing for the family was the evening visit from the landlord. You see, with the power out in the city, the roads collapsing, and the lift in their skyscraper not working, they've decided to spend the night in their house. Amanda doesn't like it because the rent is expensive, and her gut tells her that the uninvited guests are not telling her the truth. Bodyguard OK Jew has decided to quit her dangerous job. Now she sits at home, confident that she no longer needs the fighting skills and other talents that made her one of the best in the elite guard force. But when her best friend Min-hee commits suicide, demanding revenge, Ok-ju decides to give up her peaceful life. She soon discovers that the culprit behind her friend's death is the long-haired, pompous, and lecherous Choi Pro. It seems that now it's just a matter of bringing him to light and giving him what he deserves. But no sooner has the vigilante gone on the warpath than she has managed to turn a huge criminal enclave against her, and it will be difficult for her to take them on bare-handed. She'll need a rusty gun at the very least. Special Forces agent Adam Clay has come to terms with life and is no longer in a hurry. Retired, he rented a barn from a kind neighbor and became a beekeeper. As the bees settled into the hives, his soul was filled with grace. But suddenly, the neighbor fell victim to phone scammers and paid with her life. Her daughter, Special Agent Parker of the FBI, has vowed to find the culprits. But something in the beekeeper has doubts, so he takes on the case himself. He is prepared for the fact that the criminals will be a legion, because as a professional beekeeper, he is able to stir up a hive of any size. And if necessary, he can shake the criminal pyramid to its very top, even if it is supported by the ruling circles. The bad news is that the power is not to be trifled with. But the good news is that the beekeeper can't be stopped by a couple of double-crossers, and he can easily get a head start. In the house of a brave scientist experimenter lives a kind of bride of Frankenstein, a seemingly grown-up girl, Bella, who has been transplanted with a baby's brain. The scientist is satisfied with the experiment, he is happy with the success of his ward, but he realizes that she needs to be looked after. He entrusts Bella to a young lab assistant, with whom he has a difficult time. Although the girl still has difficulty taking her first steps and learning words, her sensuality is already awakened, and the unknown world outside the walls of the house beckons. As soon as the opportunity presents itself, Bella, foolish as a child, runs away with the dastardly snake seducer Duncan, who has promised to show her the world. Along the way, both characters will make many discoveries and gain invaluable experiences that will change their outlook on life. Professor Paul Matthews is an ordinary, boring family man who spends his spare time researching the collective intelligence of ants and dreams of publishing his book. The problem is that he has yet to write a single line while his more acerbic colleagues are already publishing. The professor is hurt, but not enough to do anything about it, because he has long been used to being invisible. Everything changes when it turns out that both acquaintances and complete strangers suddenly begin to see him in his dreams. As the anomaly spreads across the country and Professor Matthews makes the news, the hero sees this as a long-awaited chance to publish his book on ants. Some call the 1972 crash a tragedy, others a miracle. The ill-fated plane that crashed in the Andes was carrying members of a youth rugby team, along with their friends and relatives. Of the 45 people on board, 16 were lucky enough to survive, only to be subjected to a terrible ordeal of cold and hunger. The survivors will, of course, try to insulate themselves with what remains of their luggage, but as the frost deepens, the hope that they will be found before they starve will fade. How many days and nights will it be before these unfortunates realize that the only way to escape is to take the most desperate step? Koichi, a kamikaze pilot, is horrified to learn that his parents were killed in a bombing raid. Now he is constantly haunted by the guilt of having survived, and in his dreams he is haunted by nightmares, echoes of the horrors he experienced on Odo Island. The garrison was wiped out by a giant creature that came out of the water, called Godzilla by the locals. Wanting to forget his past, Koichi begins to take care of Noriko, a homeless girl, and the orphaned baby she rescued. Meanwhile, the government receives information that a giant, unidentified creature is approaching the Japanese islands, and it's only a matter of time before Koichi's fears come true. Ludovic Kalen has aristocratic blood in his veins, but he is only a bastard born to a servant girl. It took him 25 years to rise from a gardener's apprentice to the honorable rank of captain. After serving in the army, he has nothing to lose but a bed in an almshouse for veterans, so he decides to answer the king's call to found a colony in the Danish marshes. If the plan works, the king may grant Kalen a title of nobility that could be his by birthright, so why not take the risk? The captain sets off and finds a suitable plot of land to build on, but runs into a problem. The local prince considers the land to be his own, and immediately begins plotting against the uninvited guest.